The movie opens in San Fernando Valley, California, where Bud Yablonsky, a vampire hunter, is introduced. Disguised as a pool attendant, he gears up with weapons and enters a residence to begin his mission. Soon, an elderly woman emerges. After Bud shoots her, it is revealed that she is, in fact, a vampire. A fierce fight ensues, during which another vampire falls into Bud's string trap and dies instantly. Victorious, Bud collects their fangs, changes out of his disguise, and departs in his truck. The scene then shifts to another vampire, Audrey San Fernando, who is seen tormenting Sasha, a fellow vampire. They have reached an impasse regarding her grand ambitions for the vampire community. Ultimately, Audrey decides to bury Sasha alive as punishment. Back at home, Bud rushes to his rental property, whose door appears to be securely locked. He proceeds to shower off vampire blood using chemicals before heading to pick up his daughter, Paige Yablonsky, from school. Though he is late, the two of them seem content as they visit Yogurt World together before returning home. At home, Jocelyn Yablonsky is cleaning and expresses her frustration about Bud being late for the pickup. She questions the reason behind his tardiness. Jocelyn reveals her desire to sell their home and move to Florida with her mother due to financial struggles. She plans to use the money within 7 days to pay their daughter's school tuition and cover the cost of braces for Paige. Bud, however, is unwilling to let them relocate and promises to raise the funds, approximately $10,000, before the 7-day deadline. Bud then goes to a shop, hoping to earn significant money by selling vampire fangs. He meets Troy, the attendant, and offers him the fangs. Troy selects 2 and offers $800, which is far less than Bud could have earned through the vampire hunting organization known as the Union Organization from which Bud was banned. In desperate need of money, Bud also sells his rifle and shoes. Troubled by his lack of funds, he texts an old friend to arrange a meeting. Meanwhile, during a phone call, Audrey confirms that she possesses a product capable of allowing vampires to move across time. Upon entering her house, Audrey discovers that her beloved family has been killed. Devastated and enraged, she vows to seek vengeance against those responsible. Bud turns to Big John Elliott for help in rejoining the Union, as this would allow him to earn money. Bud was expelled for violating multiple Union codes. Big John brings Bud to the organization's headquarters, where they meet Ralph Seeger, the grumpy director who is reluctant to reinstate Bud. Ralph lists all the codes Bud has broken, but Big John pleads on Bud's behalf, convincing Ralph to give him another chance. Ralph agrees, but warns Bud that he will be closely monitored. Bud is given the contract paperwork and learns that he will have to work with a partner. Although Bud prefers to work the night shift, when vampires are most active, Ralph assigns him to the day shift. And Big John make their way downstairs to the banking department, accompanied by Seth, to sell Bud's fangs, which Troy never purchased. Upon checking them, Bud is predicted to earn $110,000, but this amount is reduced due to his previous debts and transgressions while still a minor in the association. Ralph assigns Seth to work with Bud, instructing him to report any violations Bud commits. Seth agrees, motivated by the prospect of a promotion. However, Seth and Bud don't start off on the best terms. As Bud prepares for their mission, it becomes evident that, while Seth has extensive theoretical knowledge of vampires, he lacks practical experience. They head out for a hunt, and Bud warns Seth that his first day in the field will not be easy. During their journey, Bud quizzes Seth about juvenile vampires, and Seth impresses him with his academic understanding. They discuss the various types of vampires while spying on someone Bud suspects of collaborating with vampires. When it is time to act, Bud suggests that Seth stay in the car for his safety, but Seth insists on joining him to avoid breaching Union codes. Meanwhile, Audrey pays Troy a visit and stabs his hand. Though Troy initially doubts that she can walk during the day, Audrey reveals otherwise and explains that vampires cannot survive without their fangs, holding him accountable for the deaths of her kind. She declares her intention to reclaim everything humans have taken from vampires and demands to know who sold him the fangs that Bud had last traded. Troy refuses to answer. Bud sets off on another hunt, expecting to encounter juvenile vampires, and soon confronts 3 of them. While Bud is fighting, Seth receives a call from Ralph, who inquires whether Bud has broken any codes. Realizing that Bud left him in the car, Ralph instructs Seth to follow Bud inside. Seth walks in to witness Bud battling a vampire. Overwhelmed by his first field experience, Seth vomits and wets his trousers. Bud reassures him, directing him to clean up in the truck. Afterward, Bud drops Seth off at his house, leaving him with chemicals to wash off the vampire blood. This precaution ensures that other vampires cannot detect the scent of the ones they've killed. Inside the truck, Bud makes a discovery about Seth. Bud is writing down his transgressions when he gets home and comes across a new neighbor named Heather. He greets her and welcomes her to the apartments. The next day, Bud picks up Seth and frankly tells him that he knows Seth is tracking his transgressions. He warns Seth that following union regulations would have gotten him killed long ago and asks Seth not to report to Ralph for a few days. When they arrive at Troy's shop, they discover Troy dead, with all his teeth plucked out. Bud warns Seth that they should leave immediately, but Seth insists on reporting the incident to Ralph, as it is a union rule. Bud, however, refuses to cooperate and explains that he needs money to save his family. Seth reluctantly agrees to assist him. Later, Bud returns home to find someone conversing with the new tenant. The next day, Bud and Seth head out to hunt vampires, where they are joined by the famous vampire hunters, the Nazarian brothers. After agreeing to share the fangs, the two parties decide to team up for the hunt. They proceed to a house where a fierce battle ensues. Suddenly, Bud recalls that he is late to pick Paige up from school, so they decide to leave. While Bud and Seth discuss vampires, Bud tells Seth that, with his theoretical knowledge, Seth has the potential to become a competent vampire hunter. Bud invites Paige to a party, though he doesn't seem to like the idea, as he knows Audrey and other vampires are hunting him. Still, he has no way of explaining his concerns to his family. During the birthday party, Bud receives a phone call from Audrey, who threatens to harm his family. Recognizing someone he had seen earlier, Bud rushes Paige back to the car and slices the throat of a vampire in the parking lot. Other vampires begin chasing him, leading to a dangerous race for his life. Paige, oblivious to the danger, remains distracted by her iPad game as Bud tries to escape the vampires. Soon after, Jocelyn calls to check on Paige, and Bud informs her that they are in danger. He advises her to get home and pack, promising to explain the situation later. As more vampires pursue him, some even on motorcycles, Bud is determined to do whatever it takes to escape. The chase continues as they speed through a tunnel. Where the pursuing motorbike crashes, Bud blasts the tires to navigate through a dead end, leaving the chasers unable to continue and forcing them to give up. They quickly return home to meet Jocelyn, but are ambushed by Audrey and her thugs. Jocelyn demands to know what is going on, prompting Bud to reveal his secret: he is not a pool cleaner but a vampire hunter. Audrey informs Bud that she plans to transform Paige into a vampire. After taking Paige and Jocelyn, Audrey tells Bud that an already transformed Seth will feast on him. They knock Bud unconscious and leave. When Bud awakens, he finds Seth, now a bloodthirsty vampire, attempting to attack him. Bud manages to behead Seth, but Seth's transformation by an uber vampire makes him resilient. He places his head back on and walks away. Bud leaves Seth in the car and returns to his flat. At his flat, Bud encounters Heather leaving. He attempts to fight her but discovers she is stronger because she too is a vampire. Heather tries to explain, but Bud refuses to listen as his only concern is his family. Heather confesses that Audrey turned her and reveals that the elder vampire Bud had killed was Audrey's daughter. Audrey, who was aging in human years, wanted to transform herself into a vampire. Meanwhile, Audrey and Klaus transport Jocelyn and Paige to an underground temple where Audrey plans to use Paige in her grand mission. Heather informs Bud and Seth of Audrey's preparations for LA. The three strategize to attack the camp. Upon arrival, Heather tells Seth that he can no longer be wounded due to his transformation. The battle begins, with most of the vampires attacking ferociously. As they are surrounded, Big John appears with his minigun, taking down the remaining vampires and joining Bud and the others to proceed downstairs. They travel to a compound where they discover vampires working on the development of a sunscreen that allows them to remain in the sun for 15 to 20 minutes. After dispatching the vampires, Bud and Big John continue forward. Klaus detects Bud's presence and informs Audrey, who sends him to find Bud. More vampires attack Bud and Big John in a tunnel, but they manage to fight them off. During the battle, Big John is bitten. Closing the gate behind Bud, Big John instructs him to go and rescue his wife and daughter. With Bud out of sight, Big John empties his rifle clip into the advancing vampires before detonating an explosive strapped to his waist, sacrificing himself and taking his enemies down with him. Klaus approaches Bud, but Seth and Heather arrive and demand Klaus leave, agreeing to deal with him themselves. By the time Bud reaches Audrey, she has Jocelyn in her grasp. When Bud misses his shot, Audrey knocks him out. Meanwhile, Klaus continues fighting Seth and Heather. As Audrey strikes Bud, preparing for a deadly bite, Jocelyn stabs Audrey through the heart with a wooden stake from behind. Despite this, Audrey remains undeterred and injures both Jocelyn and Bud. Seth and Heather team up to disarm Klaus and ultimately defeat him. Bud uses his final silver bullet, aiming for Audrey's neck while the wooden stake remains lodged in her heart. Audrey catches the bullet between her teeth and charges at Bud, ready to kill him. Bud shuts his eyes, resigned to his fate. Suddenly, a slicing noise reveals that Audrey has rushed into his wire trap, which decapitates her. Though Audrey's severed head mocks him briefly, she is destroyed. Now that the family is safe, Seth and Heather have joined them as they move away. On their journey, they encounter Ralph, who begins citing union regulations in an attempt to permanently remove Bud. Seth steps in to defend Bud, countering all of Ralph's accusations. An enraged Ralph informs Seth that he will not be promoted to Carol's position. However, Seth confidently replies that he is now a field man and will continue fighting vampires alongside Bud. Before leaving, Bud asks Jocelyn if he can move back into the house with her and Paige. Jocelyn agrees, but only on the condition that Bud gives her clear answers moving forward and stops lying. In the final scene, Big John is shown coming back to life, possibly as a vampire, as he slithers out of a sewer, bringing the movie to a suspenseful close. Thank you for watching. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe for more recaps. Until next time, have a great day.